The graying man on the throne looked down with hostility and told them to prepare to leave for Ayarugo. He said this to a girl with violet eyes and silver hair, the first princess of Sylvanus, Alexandra. Behind their backs, the knights of the kingdom discussed how the princess could enter into an arranged marriage with a barbarian. Men and women thought that this was too much. After all, His Majesty's blood flows into her. The second princess simply watched. Supporting his head with his fist, the green-eyed ruler asked his daughter if this is not happiness. She is useless, but this way her noble blood can be used. The princess of Sylvanus, Alexandra, was ordered by her father, the emperor, to enter into a political marriage with the hostile state of Ayarugo. And so, a month later, Alexandra set off. She unquestioningly followed all her father's words. But this was just an appearance. Only after getting into the carriage, the girl boldly showed her middle finger towards the castle. She wished her father to disappear from this world, saying he was spoiling the air, and a wide smile stretched across her face. She finally got rid of her hated homeland, and from her even more hated father, and with a heavy sigh, she thought that he really was crazy. Her father, the emperor, in order to satisfy his only desire, to make her a winner, committed various types of violence against her. One day, opening her eyes, she saw that all the windows were closed, and pillars of fire were blazing everywhere. She would have died if she had hesitated and could not get out. Then she was only 6 years old. The emperor looked at her, looking like a piece of coal, and with a crazy smile asked how she was. Still with the same madness in his eyes and smile, he asked if she had woken up. He liked it, because the person who locked all the windows and lit the fire was her father. So, more than the burned lungs, more than the limbs that began to become covered with blisters, it was the heart that hurt the most. She thought that it would be better for her heart to burn. Besides, after that incident, she was separated from her younger sister. 10 years is not the shortest period of time. This time was enough for our unfortunate heroine for her heart to burn to the ground. Sasha sighed heavily and thought that she was lucky that, thanks to her imprisonment, she was able to see her past life. Looking out the window, she thought that she liked leaving, but when she thought that she was leaving her sister Rachel, but she instantly came to her senses and shook her head in different directions and realized that now she needed to think about her future. What is Ayarugo, a place ruled by fire and iron, a land of barbarians, an isolated plain surrounded by demons? The barbarians are neither humans nor demons, but creatures united together. Her father said that she would sleep in the same bed with a person associated with a demon, and that he would probably like demons more than a cold person like her. Until now, she had listened to her father's curses only out of the corner of her ear. He liked to shower her fiancé with bad words. Ayarugo has long been an enemy state for them, and he is dissatisfied that they managed to avoid war. For a long time, everyone believed that Sylvanus was a conquering country, but one territory, Ayarugo, was not conquered. The current emperor said that if he accomplished the feat, he would capture his enemies. However, he lost, and the reason for the loss was Prince Theodore, her future husband. Then Sylvanus suggested that they conclude a truce, believing that further military actions would only bring losses. Ayarugo, knowing that their lands were surrounded by demons and the continuation of the war would be a burden on the country, proposed an arranged marriage. This meant that the countries were no longer at odds with each other and were now allies. But in fact, her father did not even think about ending the war. The truce was concluded only to buy time. He plans to deprive Ayarugo of all determination to win, and then start a war again and occupy the territory, which is why he sent her away like a discarded card. Everything was exactly like that, because her death would fall on the shoulders of Ayarugo. Declaring war on the country that had entered into a marriage alliance would become a moral duty. Alexandra smiled and wondered if the emperor suspected that the card he discarded, which he wanted to kill, would still give him a huge surprise. But to do this, she first needed to establish cooperation with one person, Theodore. But then came one of the moments of the planned stop along the way. There was a tea set and several desserts on the table. The people behind her were laughing. The girl wondered if they were joking again. From the moment she was sent on a journey in a carriage, and not through a portal, she suspected that something was wrong. Of course, she was right. Sasha did not leave the carriage for almost 10 days. There was a feeling that these limbs were not hers. And when she wanted to change her uncomfortable dress, the knights knocked on the carriage window. And now she was even asked to unexpectedly leave. Everything was modest, but tea and desserts were prepared, and one of the maids, waving her fan, told the princess to sit down. She thought it would be funny to ask them not to worry. It was not the time yet, and she came closer and sat down on a chair. She immediately took a cup of tea and looked at her. Just like when she was in the palace, she was calm and meek. But suddenly, she noticed that the tea in the cup began to tremble, and her own reflection began to distort. The next moment, the servant girl who had previously carried boiling water threw it right on the princess's face. A burn immediately formed on the girl's cheek, and the maid in a purple dress apologized in surprise to the princess, and smiling said that she had done it by accident. Smiling slyly, she offered to wipe everything off, and meanwhile the servant with the fan mockingly said that she was wet from head to toe. She believed that this look was suitable for a barbarian bride, and while the girl was in agony from pain, those accompanying her only mocked. She saw all this instead of her reflection in a cup of tea, and now she again saw herself in the reflection. Princess Alexandra was quite surprised by what the water showed her. It was the eyes of the emperor, an ability that her father craved. An ability he didn't think she could have, but she could see the past, present, future through the surface of the water. And tapping her finger on the table, she briefly put her hand to her face thoughtfully and decided to see what would happen next. But, as expected, the place and clothes are all the same as she saw through a cup of tea. In other words, what she just saw through the smooth surface of the cup will definitely happen in the future. Very hot water boiled through the lid of the kettle, and seeing that the object of mockery was vulnerable, she decided to act. The girl ran up to the princess, when suddenly the girl, sharply fixing her gaze on the danger, instantly rose from her seat. The next moment, the maid in a purple dress screamed loudly. Tears flowed from her eyes, and another girl loudly shouted to bring cold water. Everyone was simply in great shock. The girl with blonde hair was very worried about Lady Brody. As expected, the girl thought, the future she saw with the help of the Emperor's eye has completely changed. When suddenly, Alexandra quickly walked up to her and furiously asked how it happened. Tilting her head to the side in surprise, the princess asked the red-haired girl why she was interrogating her. The red-haired maid with green eyes pompously raised her head and, wrying her face, said that she was also asking. But, lowering her head, Sasha explained that she simply got up from her seat and asked why she spoke as if it was her mistake that the water spilled. Then the princess asked whether she should also act as a nanny. The maid shuddered in surprise. The girl, with peach-colored hair, mentally scolded her interlocutor, called her stupid, and wondered why she spoke so smoothly. Alexandra suddenly said thoughtfully that, however, it seemed to her that she really needed a nanny. The next moment, the girl who was already about to leave turned sharply at her, and in front of her she saw a girl who smiled slyly back at her. She thought that this was her level. Instantly, the girl's face turned sharply red. She would even like to answer something. But the next moment, the girl who received the burn began to cry loudly again, worrying that a scar would remain. Others reassured the girl and said that they needed to call a doctor when they arrived in Ayarugo, but the city was still 2 weeks away. And when she heard screams that her friends would not be able to hold out in this state, she clenched her teeth and ran away. Alexandra thought and understood that they were mocking others, but even the thought did not allow that they themselves could suffer. But by doing this, they were able to understand that they could hurt themselves, although on a subconscious level, the scar Brody received would force them to stop their bullying. Initially, the first princess thought that she would act calmly before arriving in Ayarugo, but the scene seen with the help of the Emperor's eye changed her mind, because she couldn't use her ability whenever she wanted. And if she sat still, she would actually get burned. The girl saw how the princess began to drink tea, but she heard that during 10 years in captivity she became crazy. She is the one who is not trained in manners and has no education at all, like a commoner, but she was interested in why she behaved so elegantly, when suddenly she pulled herself away and thought what she was thinking about. The elegance this time was definitely an accident, she convinced herself. The girl mentally swore. She thought that everything would be easy. His Majesty, the Emperor, personally gave her the order. But in reality, only she suffered, but she promised that everything would be different. The girl, trampling on her clothes, asked the princesses in surprise what she should do, because she had no other change of clothes. Her blonde friend laughed with her. Mockingly, she asked what she should do now, because she was now dirty, and such a noble person like her could not wear the clothes of the poor. The girl gasped mockingly and said that she was used to it, so it didn't matter, but instantly the princess picked up her dress from the floor and went into the carriage. The red-haired maid with green eyes could only look at all this in bewilderment. She looked very surprised at the sweet girl behind the curtain in the carriage who was watching her, and then immediately closed the curtain. Both girls were very surprised by this behavior, and the girl's attitude towards them. They did not understand what it was. After that boiling day, it was felt that the maids became more hesitant in their bullying, apparently feeling sorry for themselves. They were just being capricious, trying to trample her clothes. Did they really think that this would hurt her? She wondered out loud. After all, compared to throwing boiling water on her, the level of such abuse is very cute. Although the clothes are dirty, they are much more comfortable than that tight dress. However, even though this was a political marriage, a new set of clothes needed to be prepared, she reasoned. She only had the dresses she wore in captivity. And besides, Sasha couldn't even wear that new dress, since it was completely stained and it was not at all suitable for the wedding. The princess sighed sadly and thought that even though she knew about the emperor's plans, for some reason it seemed to her that it would be perfect for a wedding. Western Gate. Irugo, a man with brown hair looking from the walls, said that they say that the people of Silvanus are vile and treacherous. Another said that they are weak-willed cowards, when suddenly a man with dark purple hair and a scar on his cheek said, smiling, that it seemed to him that the princess would faint at the sight of them. When suddenly a man shut him up and told him to be quiet, he looked from the wall and explained that a delegation from Silvanus would soon arrive. The red-haired guy with gray eyes looked down when he saw that the delegation had arrived and ordered everyone to come down. They saw a man show off saying that by order of the great Emperor Silvanus, he, a knight, was accompanying the first Princess Alexandra, and asked if they were envoys from Irugo. The dark-haired man displeasedly asked why they came on a carriage and did not use the portal and also sparkle. The man with a scar asked in surprise whether they wanted to enter into battle on such carriages. How then, the luminous knight Adam coughed and asked if they were representatives of the delegation, that is, the War of Irugo. The barbarians thought that he was looking down on them, maids worrying about their outfits and carriages adorned with magnificent gems. It was already clear to Irugo's warriors that they could easily tell what a princess was like without looking at her. The knight loudly announced to bow their heads, because before them was Princess Alexandra herself. She opened the door of the carriage. The men's eyes instantly widened. They were very shocked by what, or rather, who, they saw. The girl was very cute, tiny but covered in dirt. The warriors were very interested in this small and dirty girl, like a dirty ball of cotton wool. The red-haired man was surprised at first, and then looked at her gloomily. In comparison with the luxurious carriages, her outfit was old and dirty, but he understood what the emperor was up to. And the girl also knew that the emperor wanted to send her here in the sloppiest form. War was avoided, but Silvanus was only biding his time, so it didn't matter how she would be treated there. He wanted her to be received coldly. He wanted the princess to be made as dirty as possible. Knights and luxurious gifts would demonstrate Silvanus's still strong fighting power, and the princess, like a dirty gray mouse, would be perfect for trash like them, letting them know that the bride matches their status. The barbarians realized that this was an obvious mockery. They menacingly asked what they were hinting at, that marrying their master was humiliating. He asked how she dared to appear in such a form. This was an expected reaction, but she could not be ashamed of such treatment. Literally immediately after thinking, Alexandra took a step and quickly walked towards the men. Seeing this, the red-haired man immediately followed the example of the princess and went to meet her. Having walked an equal distance,